Talk Family. Let's talk family about the things that impact us as individual family members, as a whole, as a community family, and as a country family. Let's Talk Family Live. Let's Talk Family is a program brought to you by Family Life Ministries. Family Life Ministries is a counseling organization that primarily offers individual, family, and relationship counseling. We have counselors who are available to speak on a number of subjects for your conferences for church, school, or work. Family Life Ministries is also known for its media programs, the divorce recovery program Fresh Start, and its company counseling package, the Employee Assistance Program. Visit our website at www.familylifeministriesjamaica.com. Find us on Facebook at FLM Family Life Ministries or on Instagram at FLMJA, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Family Life Ministries FLMJA. We'll give our numbers at the end of this program. Now here's today's episode of Let's Talk Family.
Good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Family. Hi, I'm your host, Halcyon Reed. Let's think about the following verses. Matthew 18, verse 4 and 5. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. What happens to a child when they are being abused? Who else are victims when a child is abused? To me, it would seem that we all would be affected if even one child is abused. But let's get an expert to answer those questions. With us today is Pauline Bain, counseling psychologist. Welcome, Mrs. Bain.
Hi, thank you for having me again.
So, when a child is being abused, what do we expect or usually see or hear? How can we tell that a child is being abused?
Well, if a child is being abused, if it's physical, we can see some of the physical signs. If it's emotional, it's a little bit harder, and sexual can be a bit harder. Neglect is easier to see because the child is thin, the child doesn't look well, the child may have sores, not cared for, and so on. But the child is affected whether we can see it or not. So the child may feel sad. The child may begin to lie and steal when the child wasn't doing that before. The child will have a low sense of self. And one of the things I have noticed with children who get lots of physical abuse, if I try to approach the child will pull back, and the child behaves as if I'm coming to hit him or her.
Mm-hmm.
And it says to me that children who are physically abused become very fearful of being hit.
Mm-hmm.
So there is that aspect of it. And as adults who care for children, we just have to be aware and look for the signs because they are not easily recognized.
All right. So we know that each child is different and they may be affected in different ways. What factors usually determine how a child is affected by abuse?
It depends on the child's personality.
Mm-hmm.
Because some children are very resilient and they're being abused, but they still try to be strong and face it and get on with it.
Mm-hmm.
While some children are not so resilient, and so they show it more than the children who are resilient.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other factors apart from their personality?
It also depends on what they know, their information.
Right.
Because some children may have information that they get at school or they listen to the radio and they discover, but I'm being abused.
Mm-hmm.
And they may take action by talking to somebody. And sometimes in the schools, there are programs to help children to know that they're being abused. I know a few years ago I was involved in a program where we did a lot of posters, and one of them for sexual abuse said, "No, go tell."
Mm-hmm.
So the child has been taught something. Say no, run away as fast as you can and tell somebody.
Right. Don't keep any secrets.
Don't keep secrets.
Right.
So if the child has had some exposure to how to respond to a situation, the child can manage it better than children who don't have the exposure.
Right. So let's differentiate between some short-term and long-term effects. What are some short-term effects of child abuse as opposed to some long-term effects?
Well, short-term effects would be their immediate responses. And some of these would be being fearful, being scared, being sad, worried. Some children don't want to go home after school if the location is home where they're being abused.
Mm-hmm.
So they linger and try to avoid the situation. Some children don't go to school because the abuse is at school, so they stay away from school. Those may be some of the short-term effects that we see. And just to repeat that, if you are walking towards a child just to talk to the child and the child flinches and the child is afraid, that could be an indication.
And long-term?
Okay, some long-term situations can be really difficult because I have met persons who are adults who still are suffering from the effects of being victims of child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Some women who have been sexually abused at age 50, and I have heard of one person who was about age 70, weep when they talk about it because it's still affecting them.
Right.
So people carry the emotional scars of abuse for years unless somebody intervenes, talks to them, and helps them to get over it. So there is depression, there is anxiety, there is all of this fear which they exhibit because they have been victims and they haven't had help. And so quietly they carry the pain and they can develop emotional disorders, mental disorders also over time because they just have not been able to manage it. So for persons who talk about it, talk about their anger, talk about what happened to them, they can have more relief and they're not as distressed as others.
Right. So psychotherapy is quite important in helping persons to get through this and get over it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, I hear some people saying, but it happened a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they still talking about that? But the fact is that it has affected them. And we could talk about how it affects the brain because it's imprinted on the brain and it affects them all the time, even though they may not talk about it.
Right. Sometimes a child is in a home being abused and there are other children or other persons in the home, in the family, the community. What are the effects on these other persons, the society in general?
Sometimes other children know about it and they say nothing, so they keep quiet also. And there are times when other members of the family know and they keep quiet. And sometimes in the community, there is knowledge, but everybody is saying, it's not my business. I can't do anything about it. And I would encourage people in families and communities, if you know that there is this abuse going on in somebody else's family, talk to somebody. Unfortunately, sometimes when people talk about these issues, especially if they go to the police are not confidential enough. And so the family will hear who told the police. Or if it is a teacher who told the police, they just don't handle it well enough, in my opinion. And I think that all of us in our homes, our communities where we work, need to learn how to be confidential, handle abuse so that it doesn't have repercussions where somebody goes back and hurts the person who talks about it and discloses it.
How can child abuse affect another helpless child in the home? So this child is not necessarily being abused, but they're witnessing the abuse of their sibling or cousin or whatever. What sort of effect can that have on that child?
Well, that child is also a victim, because the child is witnessing it, but afraid to do anything about it. And this is why we need to teach our children very early to have courage, to speak up, and not to keep secrets that are detrimental to their mental and physical health. We just have to help them to say, you must talk about it as quickly as possible. And this is why in the school system, the educational information can help our children to be aware. And we do role plays with them and teach them how to stand up and talk about this without being afraid.
So there are some cultures that have a lot of this kind of thing, child abuse. How does it affect the society in a long-term way?
Well, sometimes we don't even know what's happening in some of these small groups unless it is revealed. And so we see people coming and going in a certain area, but we really don't know what's going on inside. And we can only be curious. But unless the authorities come in and check what we suspect is happening, well, nothing will happen. We'll just be thinking about it and not sure what's going on.
Thank you, Mrs. Bain. Let's be there for each other, especially our children. Please, let's all support, protect, and love them. What hurts one hurts us all. Well, listeners, that's all the time we have for today. Join us next week for another interesting topic. Thanks for listening. I'm Halcyon Reed, and this was Let's Talk Family. Remember to stay safe and care for others like you would want to be cared for. Have a blessed evening.
And you feel my life, you're everything to me, and there's nothing else I need anymore.
This was Let's Talk Family, a production of Family Life Ministries. If you or anyone you know would like advice and counseling, call us or head office at 1 Cecilio Avenue at 876-926-8101, 876-929-4360, or 876-920-1034, or even our center in Portmore at 117 Cecile Avenue at 876-939-7917.
This program was produced at the studio of the United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, located at 12 Carlton Crescent, Kingston 10. Call us at 876-926-6059 for your voiceover and broadcasting needs.